In December of 2021, I presented 10 pre-tribulation rapture passages from Ephraim the Syrian that I had discovered in my own research, passages which were previously unknown to the prophecy-loving world. Joel Richardson responded by claiming that all 10 of these passages were actually post-tribulation rapture passages and claiming that I had mishandled them. Well, today we're going to examine one of these passages, the one from Ephraim's Sermon on the Advent, the End, and the Coming of the Antichrist. In particular, we're going to look at the ellipsis, that is the sentence or the piece of material that I left out in my citation. Now, I left this material out, this sentence out, because it was irrelevant to the point that I was making, which is that the passage itself is teaching a pre-tribulation rapture. Joel claims in a published video that I left out material that is fatal to the pre-tribulation rapture, material that plainly states a post-tribulation rapture. He claims this in his series, The Rapture and the Endurance of the Saints, episode 22. Today we're going to look at Joel's translation, we're going to look at my translation, we're going to look at the original Greek. Well, it's actually not the original Greek, it's the ancient Greek translation of the original Syriac. And we're going to look at the context. And then you can decide who's mishandling the passage. Stay tuned for a nitty-gritty handling of this passage. Hi there, I'm Lee Brainerd. Welcome to Soothkeep and another edition of Prophecy in the Crucible. My mission is truth. Truth at any cost. Truth above every other consideration. There is a big brouhaha over my handling of the supposed pre-trib rapture passage in Ephraim's work, Sermon on the Advent, the End, and the Coming of the Antichrist. Have I bungled my handling of this passage? Did I intentionally conceal post-trib material in this passage? Well, let's start by examining the passage itself. Watch always, praying continually, that you might be worthy to escape the tribulation. And then you see the ellipses indicated in red. If anyone has tears and compunction, let him pray the Lord that he might be delivered from the tribulation which is about to come upon the earth, that he might not see it at all, nor the beast himself, nor even hear of its terrors. Now, the gist of this passage here is very simple. We see a performance-based deliverance early on, watching and praying to be worthy to escape the tribulation. Right after that, we see another performance-based deliverance. Tears and compunction, praying to be delivered from the tribulation. But we also see in this passage the manner of the deliverance. We see not see the tribulation, not see the beast, and not even hear of the beast's terrors. So in my mind, the ellipsis here is not consequential to the point that I was making, which is deliverance from the tribulation. Joel's complaint, however, is very different. Joel complains that my ellipsis left out material that plainly teaches a post-trib rapture view. So let's hear Joel explain the ellipsis problem.
Okay, so here's the first problem, is that when we look at the full statement, the entire quote that Lee is actually quoting, he cuts parts out. In fact, he cuts a line out that clearly disproves, debunks everything that he just said. Right in the middle of the sentence, he cuts it and removes it. Let's read the full statement here. So it says again, always be awake, watching constantly, so that you may be found worthy to escape the tribulation and stand before God, for the time is near. For we will all face this evil together, yet we do not believe. Let us continually be found in tears and prayers day and night, falling upon God so that we sinners may be saved. If anyone has tears and grief, let us pray to the Lord that we may be saved from the future sorrow coming upon the earth, that he may not see this beast at all, nor hear his terrors again. So right in the middle of the sentence, the quote that Lee quotes, Pseudo-Ephraim says, we will all face this evil together, yet we don't believe. Now, I want to ask you this question. If you're a pre-tribber watching this, why did Lee remove that line? Why did Lee cut that line out in his presentation? It seems like a pretty relevant statement, doesn't it? He says, we will all face this evil together. Why did he remove that line? Now, again, I don't want to assume malice. I don't want to assume deception. I don't want to assume dishonesty on Lee's part. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But it would be up to him to actually answer that, wouldn't it? It looks awfully fishy. If you're trying to be honest and you remove a line which clearly flips everything that you're about to say on its head, it definitely seems like dishonesty, doesn't it?
Now I grant that this looks bad. Based on this, I half empathize with those who regard me as an intentional liar or a deceiver or a wolf in sheep's clothing who has deceitfully manipulated the text to teach error. It is half understandable when men, based on this presentation, question whether they can ever trust me again, whether they can ever trust anything I say again. But notice I said half. Why? Why do I say half? Because we have an obligation to hear both sides. We read in Proverbs 18:17, the one who states a case seems right until the other comes and cross-examines him. In other words, we have an obligation to carefully hear and weigh the testimony of the defense after we have heard and been moved by the testimony of the prosecution. As Joel himself so aptly explains.
Now, this is where things begin to change. Again, you watch one of these crime TV shows and you watch something, you go, man, that person is guilty. Crystal clear, that person's guilty. And all of a sudden they start presenting the other evidence. And you go, whoa, there's a few huge zingers.
Have you obeyed this biblical exhortation? Have you taken the crime thriller illustration to heart? If you have watched Joel's video, you have heard the prosecution. In this video, I will present the testimony of the defense. And you need to hear the defense cross-examine the prosecution. So let's move on to the cross-examination of the evidence that was presented by the prosecution. Here's Joel's slide again. Always be awake, watching constantly, so that you may be found worthy to escape the tribulation and stand before God, for the time is near. For we will all face this evil together, yet we do not believe. Let us continually be found in tears and prayers, night and day, falling upon God, so that we sinners may be saved. If anyone has tears and grief, let us pray to the Lord that we may be saved from the future sorrow coming to the earth, that he may not see this beast at all, nor hear his terrors again. Now, the regular text in red here marks minor translation issues that should be addressed. The all caps text in red marks an extremely egregious mistranslation of the ellipsis. So now it's time to put on our detective hats and examine the facts. Fact gathering and fact checking is everything. As Sherlock Holmes says, it is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts. The facts will reveal that the translation Joel has offered here is a comedy of errors, one that has twisted facts to suit his theory. Now, I'm not going to address the lesser translation issues in detail or in depth. I'm only pointing them out as a backdrop of evidence which puts Joel's miserable translation of the ellipsis in its proper context. Now, whether these translation problems are best traced to intentional and unnecessary paraphrase or to struggling with Greek that was over the translator's head, or whether conforming the translation to theological presuppositions, it's hard to say what's really going on here. But it's easy to see that there are problems here that are undeniable to anyone who actually knows Greek. So what are the issues in brief? First of all, why translate the verb pray as be found? Is this a paraphrase? Why translate falling before or prostrating as falling upon? There is a difference in nuance here. Why translate future tribulation as future sorrow? This is kind of unusual. Why conflate two distinct clauses into one and give us that he may not see the beast at all? Is this an intentional paraphrase, or was someone struggling with the Greek structure? Why place again, which is the Greek word palin, at the end of the clause rather than at the beginning? This is missing the actual grammatical connection. But these are small points. I'm just pointing them out for the sake of context. Let's move on to the big issue. Joel's big mistake is his translation of the ellipsis. Now, I'm not saying he translated this himself, but he's giving us this translation, and he's standing on this translation. And his translation is, "For we will all face this evil together, yet we do not believe." This translation implies that the material of the ellipsis refers to the future tribulation. Folks, this is a horrible translation.
This is a horrible translation. It's bad. Even Crooked Hillary could make a better translation.
This translation contains 6 serious blunders. This is either a gravely inept translation or it is an intentional manipulation. I have seen many horrible mistranslations over the years that have been offered by pastors and teachers. But this is the single worst, absolute worst translation of an easy Koine passage that I have ever seen in 40 plus years of dealing with the Greek. I have never seen a simple Greek sentence so badly mangled, so badly bungled. Joel should have vetted this translation with a legit Greek scholar. Now here is the original in interlinear format. You can see we have chi with and, we have n with in, we have this evil, you see that, we have we stand, we have all, we have chi and again, we have not, and then we have we believe. In vernacular English, this is we all stand in this evil, and we do not believe. This is straightforward Koine Greek. There's nothing complicated here. Any student with the year of Greek under his belt, assuming that he took his Greek seriously and he isn't high on the spiritual cocaine of some theory, can make an accurate translation of this sentence with nothing more than a Thayer's lexicon and a first-year grammar in his hands. So how are we going to explain the 6 serious blunders in Joel's translation? These are not blunders in complicated Greek like literary Koine or scientific Koine, which can test the savvy of even brilliant Greek scholars. These are blunders in simple Greek. So let's examine the blunders in Joel's translation. Here you see 7 circled problems, which we're going to address in the next few minutes in 6 distinct points. Let's start with the first one. Why does Joel's translation translate and by the word for? In for we will all face this evil. For is a conjunction that implies that an explanation or a reason or a cause for a matter follows. The problem is the text doesn't include any of the conjunctions that are normally translated by for. We don't see gar, we don't see hote, we don't see dihote. The text only shows the common coordinating conjunction kai, which is translated and most of the time, and occasionally also to or even. The conjunction kai links things. The conjunction for brings an explanation of things. For is an unusual translation of kai. The bottom line is putting for in this sentence is a gratuitous addition. It's a gratuitous insertion that changes the sense of the sentence. Secondly, why does Joel's translation add the word together in we will all face this evil together? The adverb hamu, together, does not appear in the original. The preposition soon, which does mean with or together, is not prefixed to the verb. The verb is not stand together, the verb is simple stand. So there is no word together in this sentence. The word together implies that those who face the evil face it at the same time and at the same place. The bottom line is putting the word together in this sentence is a gratuitous insertion that changes the sense of the sentence. The third problem is, why does Joel's translation translate and by the word yet in yet we do not believe? There's no particle, no conjunction, there's no adverb here, which normally and legitimately can be translated yet. For instance, we don't see kaitoi, we don't see eti, and we don't see plain. The text features the common coordinating conjunction kai, which, as I already mentioned, is normally translated and is occasionally translated also to or even. Yet is in a very unusual translation of kai. The word yet implies an exception, not an addition. Kai implies addition. The word yet implies a lack, not an addition, like kai does. The bottom line is adding yet to this sentence is a gratuitous insertion that changes the sense of the sentence. Fourthly, why does Joel's translation say we face this evil? The passage says we stand in this evil. The verb is steko, which means stand, not face. Stand implies location. Face, the way Joel is using it, implies opposition or resistance. Make no mistake, folks, those who face the Antichrist in the tribulation will have to oppose and resist the great delusion with a serious amount of serious spiritual warfare. Joel's translation of the verb steko by the word face is extremely unusual. Go through the New Testament on your own and examine every passage where the verb steko appears with the simple dative case. Insert the word face instead of the stand that appears in most English translations and see if it makes any sense at all. Unless you have an exceptionally vivid imagination, none of them are going to make sense if you put the word face in it. Now, you don't need to know Greek to do this exercise, folks. You can easily do this with the Englishman's Greek Concordance, and you can also do it with the Strong's Lexicon, that will take a little bit more work. The truth is, if Ephraim had wanted to say face or oppose or resist or anything like that, there were plenty of words in Greek that he could have chosen. He could have used anthistemi or antitasso or antidiatithemi or katagonizomai. Typically, all of these words for face and oppose and resist, they start with the preposition kata or the preposition anti. The bottom line is, changing the verb from stand to face is a gratuitous change that completely changes the sense of the sentence. The fifth problem is, why does Joel's translation ignore the fact that the phrase "the evil" appears in the dative case with the preposition "en"? It's actually "in the evil." Why ignore the preposition "en"? The phrase in question runs like this: in this definite article, evil, we stand. In vernacular English, this is very easy. This is just, we stand in this evil. Folks, this is basic Bible school Greek here. There should be no problems. The dative with the preposition "en" indicates location or situation, and occasionally instrumentality. It is not used to indicate direct objects. There is no way under the sun that this little stretch here can mean we face this evil. The Greek that's in the text lacks two things necessary for such a translation. First of all, evil is not connected with a verb of opposition. It's just simply the verb stand. It's primarily used for location and situation. Secondly, evil is not expressed as a direct object. For instance, it's not expressed in the accusative case, which is an accusative object, and it's not expressed in the simple dative case, which is a dative object. And Greek often uses a dative where English would use a direct object. Now, the root verb stand can be used for opposition, but when it is used with the prefix anti, so that we have anthistemy, which means against stand. And it's translated withstand, resist, oppose, and at times face. This verb anthistemy appears 14 times in the Byzantine text of the New Testament with the simple dative object. For example, you see it in Romans 9:19, Romans 13:2, Acts 6:10, Acts 13:8, Galatians 2:11, Ephesians 6:13, 2 Timothy 3:8, 2 Timothy 4:15, and James 4:7. Now, this raises a huge question. Why did Joel's translation not translate the preposition "en"? Why did Joel's translation translate the prepositional phrase "in this evil" by "this evil" as if this were a direct object? Is this traced to incompetence or criminal intent? The bottom line is, translating the prepositional phrase "in this evil" as if it were a direct object, the evil, is a hugely gratuitous change that completely alters the sense of the sentence. Sixthly, the verb stand is in the present tense, not the future tense. It says we are standing in this evil, not we will stand in this evil, much less we will face this evil. This is not talking about some evil that they are going to face in the future tribulation at the end of the age. It's talking about an evil that they are currently standing in. It refers to evil in their present situation, not a future situation. It refers to evil in their present circumstances, not future circumstances. So why does Joel's translation mistranslate the present tense? Why does it give us the future tense? Every student of Greek with a solid year under his belt knows the difference between the present tense and the future tense. This tense change is a gratuitous change that significantly, completely changes the sense of the sentence. Now, I'm going to present the evidence here for the proper translation of stako so that people don't have the opportunity or the luxury to start whining about "that's my translation and other translations are just as valid." Folks, this is fundamental Greek translation. So stako is a present tense. It means stand. It's a late Hellenistic koine back formation from hesteka, which is the perfect tense of histemi, I stand. This form ultimately morphed into the medieval and modern form steko. Now, the lexicons that present this information are many. You can go to Liddell and Scott, their Greek-English lexicon. You can go to BDAG, which is a Greek-English lexicon of the New Testament that was, well, it's edited by Bauer, Donker, Arndt, and Gingrich. You can go to Lamps, a patristic lexicon. You can go to Thayer's Greek-English lexicon of the New Testament. You can go to the Abbott Smith Manual Greek Grammar of the New Testament. There's numerous sources you can find this information. It is not hard to find. This is right on the surface. This is basic Greek, folks. This is a present tense form. There's nothing here that's confusing. It's not an odd form. It's not a unique form. It's not one anyone can accidentally mistake for a future form. So let's quickly review the translation blunders that were made here. And was translated by for. The word together was added. And was translated by yet. Stand was translated by face. The preposition in was ignored, and a prepositional phrase was translated as if it were a direct object. And the present tense was replaced by the future tense. Joel's translation says, "For we will all face this evil together, yet we do not believe." And the correct translation is, "And we all stand in this evil, and we don't believe." Joel's translation's trying to make this out to be a reference to the future tribulation, and in it is actually talking about standing in a present evil. Now, let's review the passage with the corrections in place. "And again, watch always, praying continually, that you may be worthy to escape the tribulation and stand before God. For the time is near, and we all stand in this evil, and we don't believe. Let us pray continuously with tears and prayers, night and day, prostrating ourselves before God, that we sinners might be delivered. If anyone has tears and compunction, let him pray the Lord that we might be delivered from the tribulation which is about to come upon the earth, that he might not see it at all, not the beast himself, not even, moreover, hear of his terrors." Now, how do we interpret the ellipsis? Well, let's take the line, "and we all stand in this evil." Note, whatever this evil is, men are currently standing in it. It's not something off in the future. It can't refer to the future tribulation. This evil, if you're looking at the context, can only refer to the evil of not watching and praying, though the tribulation is near. And what's with "and we don't believe"? Very simple. They don't believe the warnings of the approaching tribulation, and they don't believe the exhortations to watch and pray. Now, examine the flow and the sense of the passage. We have a warning, watch and pray that you may be worthy to escape the tribulation. We have a warning, pray that we might be delivered from the tribulation. And we have a compromise. We all stand in this evil of not watching and praying like we should. We have another compromise. We don't believe the warnings and exhortations like we should. Sounds just like today, doesn't it? And there's a deliverance here, that we might be delivered from the tribulation. And the deliverance is defined. The context tells us what delivered from the tribulation means. It means escape the tribulation, not make it through the tribulation. Notice it's also associated with "and stand before the Lord." Those who escape the tribulation will be immediately standing before the Lord. This is an escape that takes you to the courts of heaven, just like we see in John 14, 1 through 3. Notice also it says "not see it at all." They're not going to see the tribulation at all, not in any way, shape, or form, not in any sense. not in any sense or degree. They're not going to see the beast. They're not even going to hear about the terrors of the beast. This is saying they're not going to personally experience the beast, and they're not going to be bothered by rumors and news. They could be sitting in heaven watching the updates on the tribulation on big screen TV while they're drinking their Heaven Bucks coffee. So in conclusion, let me summarize what we just walked through. I presented this passage in Ephraim as evidence that Ephraim believed in a pre-tribulation rapture. Joel ripped this claim and insisted it was actually a post-trib passage. He claimed that it looked like an act of dishonesty to leave out the sentence that I left out. He claimed that taking that sentence out completely changed what the passage said, and he claimed that putting that ellipsis back in completely changed what the passage said. And he proved this with a humdinger translation that is a complete disgrace. That translation is hands down the worst piece of translation I have seen offered by a pastor or a teacher in over 4 decades of dealing with Greek. It made 6 major translation errors in one easy sentence. So who's the real manipulator here? It is Joel's bogus translation that completely changes the sense of the passage.
Translation is science. When you do science this bad, you can't even fold a good paper airplane, much less put a colony on Mars.
When this sentence is translated accurately, it completely harmonizes, it readily harmonizes with the pre-trib deliverance presented in the passage. And it reflects just exactly what we have going on today. We've got a warning of a coming tribulation, we've got the need to watch and pray, and we've got lots of professing Christians and many in the world who are oblivious to the coming tribulation and who are not watching and praying, and they're not taking advantage of the offered deliverance from the coming tribulation. He saw in his day exactly what we see in our day. Folks, Joel's video is a classic example of the fact that we need to hear both sides of an issue, to hear them both fully, to weigh them both, and to withhold judgment until the defense has cross-examined the prosecution. Now, this raises a momentous question. Why did Joel employ such a butchered translation of the sentence in question? One that changes the sense of the sentence and changes the sense of the passage. The options are few, and none of them are a good look. Is this best traced to an intentional manipulation of the text to make it teach a post-trib rapture? Or is this best traced to overconfidence and recklessness that exploited a translation that he could have known and should have known was horrible? Or is this best traced to overconfidence and recklessness that failed to vet his sources and trusted questionable scholarship? I really don't know. But even if Joel is innocent of intentional deception here, he still faces the disgrace of not properly vetting this Greek translation. So what does Joel have to say for himself in this matter? Will he surrender to the facts? I hope so. Will he find some half-baked Greek scholar to double down on this translation? I hope not. Because, folks, this whole debate is going to be tried by fire at the judgment seat of Christ. Not merely the interpretation of the pre-trib verses in the Bible, but the interpretation of the whole J.N. Darby thing and the interpretation of the early church testimony. It's all going to be tried by fire at the judgment seat of Christ. Eyes wide open, brain engaged, heart on fire. We'll see you next time.